Hello there everybody, this is Alex from Hardcore Guides, being my guide for Transformers Devastation on Prime difficulty. Today we are doing Chapter 2 entitled The Proudstar, and we are of course still doing the Sideswipe campaign. This chapter will have a lot of Insecticon fights, and it's going to get pretty annoying. This is definitely, I would say, maybe one of the more hard-ish chapters to do. Not necessarily like the most difficult. I would definitely say probably Chapter 6 might be considered maybe the most difficult. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head. What's funny is, so like I just finished all this stuff yesterday. I just beat the entire game again yesterday within like a few hours, of course, because it's a pretty short game. You can beat it pretty quick. And yeah, everything's kind of running together again, so my brain has to kind of remember what everything's about. I will say though, for these arms here, you don't have to fight them. They're relatively pretty much optional. I just did it anyway because I kind of forgot that they wore. Typically, you'll know if something's optional or not because the screen will flash yellow and it will tell you, have like the yellow walls around and stuff, which obviously means you can't escape unless you've beaten everything there. Which is still pretty cool. A pretty cool concept that games like this have always adopted. Coming from like Devil May Cry, which, to be fair, I'm not sure if exactly Devil May Cry might have started that whole thing, but as far as I can remember, DMC is definitely one of the originals to do a lot of the stuff we have today, which is pretty cool. So, after fighting them, you're going to be dealing with ground soldiers. This is, of course, a actual fight. This is the true mission one. And so, I got lucky enough to where I got them all three in a corner, and this came in real handy. So, because they're in the corner, I was able to do like a ton of, nice, good energy attacks, maybe a couple of loudspeaker stuff here and there, and just good dodges, right? So that's where that kind of came in handy, came in clutch, and it's perfect, especially for the ultimate attack, which also lines them up too. There's only 3 ground soldiers, nothing really too hard to worry about. Ground soldiers usually only ever really get very hard if you're fighting multiple enemies across at the same time, and god damn it, watching me play this makes me want to just go back and play it again. It's just, I love this game. I love it a lot. So yeah, ground soldiers, relatively easy enough. Just how, I'm pretty sure at this point, like, because they have such slow attacks, they should be relatively somewhat easier to dodge. But yeah, they're not too hard, thankfully, because there's not like a whole bunch of other enemies around them. So right now, I think we're going to go fight. Well, first we got to go fight some Seekers, but then after that, we actually have a boss fight with was it Skywarp or Thundercracker first? I can't remember exactly who, but it's definitely one of the Minosaur, combiners. That's for sure. But anyway, so yeah, Seeker guys. These red guys, typically sometimes they have a shield, but I guess right now they don't have a shield. You could say it's the same thing with like the regular blue soldiers, where they sometimes have shields and sometimes don't. So something I want to point out is, even if you don't have guns, even if you don't have range for this fight, besides Sideswipe's ultimate attack, of course, being, a ranged attack, which is pretty nice. Even if you don't have the range to take these guys out with a gun, because, like, I don't have a lot of energy on my normal gun, right? I don't know why I even have it to begin with, but I do just because. I could have had way better stuff, but I had what I had. So, even if you don't have that, it's perfectly fine, because all you really need to do is just get vehicle attacks going. And those are usually done, for those that might not know, those are usually done at the end of a combo. You'll have the opportunity to press, like R2, and then after that, like, you'll glow blue, and then after that, you can do it right there, pretty much. So there's a lot of ways to get them out. Of course, like a charged attack where you're boost attack, I should call it. There's that, and then also you can do a combo without actually hitting anybody and start that one up too. And vehicle attacks, especially on Seekers, are really nice because they allow you to get in the air pretty fast, because a lot of your stuff will just launch you into the air at them. So this fight right here, we have the Sentry Bot. Don't worry about the Sentry Bot boss fight itself. This chapter has a lot of boss fights though. Like Soundwave is here, Sentry Bot's here. I'm pretty sure, either Sky or Thunder was here. I can't remember exactly. Maybe Motormaster too, I think. But yeah, these guys, I'm just gonna use the ice thing on them because, well, at the time I didn't realize it would work, but it did work. So this is actually a pretty nifty pair of swords here, though, to be fair. After all my playthroughs, I never noticed just how decent and how good the ice mechanic can actually be. But usually it only works on the much smaller Decepticons. So, the obvious ones that you can pretty much freeze with it. The ones you think you would probably be able to, right? And that's what kind of sucks, but it is what it is. Also, another thing I kind of got lucky with is I luckily saved my ultimate attack for this fight, because you can just jump up here and then whip out the ultimate attack and just blast him down, and he just gets wasted. This is where I think Sideswipe comes in handy big time. Is because his ultimate attack is just devastating. You can aim it at people. You can do it in midair. I mean, I think you do everybody's in midair, but still, just the fact that you can do this, all that stuff together is just really awesome. So now we get to fight the Insecticons, and we have, looks like, Scrapnels, and I think maybe a Bombshell was, yep, Bombshell's in there. So Bombshells are the least of your concern. Bombshells, you know, they're usually the easiest one to kind of deal with. Just leave them alone. Kickbacks are the most aggressive of the fighters. They're usually the ones more in your face. And Scrapnels are the ranged fighters. The mages, I guess you could say. If I were you, I would recommend going after, at the very least, a kickback or a Scrapnel. If you have multiple Scrapnels on field at once, just go for them. The most Bombshell's going to do is he's probably just going to launch, like... Sorry. He's probably just going to launch something like, I don't know, maybe like a bomb thing or something, which you could easily dodge. Sorry. I'm not fucking redoing the commentary this time. But yeah, you can easily dodge a lot of Bombshell stuff. It's Scrapnel stuff that you have to kind of watch out for. He's the one that you really want to have to take out first, because Scrapnels, you know, they may not be exactly melee aggressive, but they are aggressive with the magic attacks. It's ridiculous how many times, you know, I've gotten hit by just random range stuff. But, of course, you know, I didn't think that much through. I just kind of went with whoever. Which, to be fair, you know, when you're in a fight, when you're in a normal fight, it's almost impossible just to kind of, you know, pick and choose who you kind of want to go for, right? I'm going to take a quick swig. I'm sorry. I mean, it's been like, what, 3 guides of this thing? I think it's fine for me to be a little bit less professional, and I hate having to clear my throat, especially on mic. Apologies for that. If it happens again, I'll mute my mic and do what I can. So, anyway, yeah, kickbacks, all they really ever do is just go for mostly melee combat, which, you know, if you wanted to, you can make them a priority too. I would still say Bombshells should at least be the least prioritized, mainly because of the fact that they kind of keep their distance a lot of the time and try to implant bomb stuff, which even if they did do that, then just dodge it if it's about to explode, you know. So, but again, you know, even if you're a fight, it might be kind of hard to do that. Anyway, next up is Soundwave, and I completely just decimated this fight of Soundwave, though. I didn't decimate him in Chapter 6, but I did a pretty wild job here. So he's got 2 cassette tapes. They're usually pretty much random. I think for the first 2, it's going to be the first main 2. It's going to always be the dog / you know, jet bird one. So those are the first 2 you're going to have to fight. And then after that, I just do the old-fashioned Soundwave loudspeaker combo on him, which is kind of ironic using a loudspeaker to defeat Soundwave with it. But yeah, Soundwave's my favorite boss fight in the entire game. He has my favorite music in the entire game. It just sucks that he gets so underutilized. It's almost criminal how much you don't really get to fight him, and how much you don't get out of it as well. Transformers Devastation 2 would have been something we could have definitely used for sure. But we don't need it, but it would be nice to ever one day have. Yeah, for him, it's really just a matter of hitting him a few times, and either before your combo ends, or even after that, even after a vehicle attack, you go straight for a loudspeaker stun. And then after that, you know, the rest is pretty easy. You just keep doing that over and over again, and even if he does parry you, just use loudspeaker again to try to hit him and stun him again. So, yeah. Now, in this area, I did die at least once, maybe twice. This part's really difficult. First wave, not so bad. You got a lot of small enemies. You got, like, one big, giant Bombshell enemy who, of course, you know, because it's Bombshell, won't necessarily be that hard to deal with. But I had the ultimate attack. I'm just going to use it on him. Just waste him. I would recommend wasting it on everybody else, especially if you're Sideswipe with that ranged attack. because at the very least, you know, taking out the scrapnels that tend to kind of like stay away and use various ranged attacks, you know, they're very annoying and they're very obnoxious to deal with. So that's why I recommend going for them first if you possibly can, because they're going to do stuff like that. They're going to have the lightning strikes that you kind of have to watch out for. And I'm not saying that you guys are bad, or I'm not saying that you guys, you know, have to take them out or whatever. I'm just recommending to people that, you know, might actually have trouble with these guys, you know, in the off chance that, like, yeah, these guys are very annoying to deal with. And, I mean, hell, look at me. You know, I'm going after them first, so if anybody's bad, it's got to be me, right? Yeah, Wave 2, again, also not so bad. It's the later waves that start to get really obnoxious, because now you have to deal with, like, a ton of them, and you also have, like, all this cover that keeps popping up, which, yeah, you know, to be fair, having cover is nice, but the problem is I can't aim in and hit these guys for shit. Also, this goes without saying, but use your minimap to your advantage, especially when you're in your ultimate attack, mainly for Sideswipe, because having that ultimate attack going off at the same, like, or having that ultimate attack going off and not knowing where the enemy is at is going to be hell. You know, it's not going to be very fun wasting it on pretty much just nothing. So, like I said, I know it goes without saying, but I just want to make sure that people, you know, remember that the minimap is there, and it does kind of get used. I do use it, so I'm just saying in general, just for future reference, especially toward me as well, like, hey, don't forget, you know, that thing's there, especially for Sideswipe, because it's actually a pretty useful tool to have. But, yeah, these guys, they get way more obnoxious the farther you go in, because they become a lot more, well, I mean, they don't really change in terms of, like, their attack patterns or anything like that, but there's just more of them. There's just more of them, and a lot of scrapnels to deal with, and it's just not fun to have to fight scrapnels. This thing right here, this is for a extra item, I think it was. So I believe I already got all that stuff. You know what's weird? I have yet to platinum this game, and I think one of the trophies is getting all double S ranks on every mission, which I understand the idea of how to do it, but that's really, really tough to do. So anyway, next real fight. This one's a lot more obnoxious if you play the way that I do, which is, you know, trying too hard to focus on melee and not trying too hard to go for vehicle attacks. Vehicle attacks are your biggest friend in this game, by far. And also, you know, try to focus on one guy at a time. I know it might sound like a struggle sometimes because, you know, there's so many enemies in the background that keep hitting me with stuff. But in a room like this, especially with a kickback being as big as he is, your best bet is just to kind of focus on the kickback and not worry about everybody else behind him. Deal with him first, and then after that, you know, deal with the small fry. This room is, I think, non-optional as well, it looks like. It says Mission 7, so I'm pretty sure it is probably a mandatory mission. Well, sometimes no, sometimes yes, it depends. But, yeah, the key trick with all this stuff is, of course, witch time and vehicle attacks. And that's another thing that kind of goes without saying, too, of course. But I just want to let you guys know that I'm not trying to be, you know, super fancy. Like, I'm trying my best here. But sometimes my best ends up accidentally either being too fancy or just not being reliable enough. It happens. It happens. But I'm just letting you guys know that even though I'm doing things, quote-unquote, potentially poorly, or not doing it as well thought out, that still the best idea is relatively going for those dodges as much as you can. One key trick with at least especially Transformers is, I've mentioned this before, but, you know, mashing the dodge button is going to be very helpful, because if you have the upgrade for it where you can get hit and still dodge, that's going to be a very, very useful tool in your kit. It's basically the Bayonetta Bats ability from Bayonetta, but at least in this game, I feel like it's a lot easier to kind of pull off, because you can just mash the hell out of dodge. With Bayonetta, you can't really mash it because it'll just transform if you do, but still. Then you get like 3 different dodges, which this game also has 2, I think. If you dodge too many times, you'll eventually, you know, run out of times to dodge until you wait like a second or 2. But yeah, these guys, you don't need to take them out, but I did anyway just because they got in the way. They were getting very obnoxious to deal with, so these guys are relatively completely optional, but I recommend taking them down just for the sake of just getting rid of them, because they're going to get in your way. But if you're quick enough, you can easily go to the turret section and just have fun. Because honestly, the turret section, out of all things, and Transformers, this right here is the best placed turret section in any game I can think of. In any game I can think of on top of my head. I mean, there's probably a couple more that are better, but This one, for no doubt about it, it's one of the most fun, it's one of the most easiest of the turret sections in any game I've played that I can remember right now. Because, you know, the enemies, they stay on the screen long enough for you to shoot them and get that feeling of blowing them up. They're not really that hard. You know, you get a few bombs that kind of appear that you can blow up, which is nice. And it's right inside, like, yeah, it is in Chapter 2, but this is the one time you'll ever use a turret section. And not to mention, you know, you've played the game at this point for at least a good amount of time, that a turret section right now shouldn't really ruin it for some people. I mean, it doesn't ruin it for me, I should say that. I get that some people might not like turret sections, and that's completely fine. I don't either. But this is one of the few exceptions that I always have. And there's really no reason to explain how to do the turret section very well, because it's just a turret section. You know how to deal with it. It's pretty simple. Just shoot where they're at, and there you go. When bombs appear, shoot them. So next up is going to be one of the more harder fights. It's a big variant of Scrapnel. And this guy is a complete asshole, because if you're not having him stunned, if you're not always going for vehicle attacks, he's going to transform, and he's gonna fly. And when he's in fly mode, he's going to use a lot of his electrical attacks, and that's going to be very hard to have to deal with. At least for me it was. Sorry. So, one thing is, you know, going for a combo and getting that stun, and then after that, trying to use your ultimate attack to do as much damage as you can. I'd say wait till he's closer to being dead. Use it whenever you feel like, of course, but I still recommend going for it, at least when he's closer to being dead. Kind of like the final boss in God Hand, right? Like, you kind of want to wait to use the main super attack until he's about done, so that way you can just finish him off and not have to keep going. But yeah, he gave me some trouble. Now, this fight right here has a checkpoint halfway through, but first you got to take down a bombshell, which he's luckily, you know, even for a big variant, not too bad. Bombshells, again, are not, they're not the hardest of the Insecticons to kind of deal with, to be fair. I mean, all you really got to do is just do the same thing you did with the last guy. We pretty much just go for vehicle attacks, go for a few hits, you know, that kind of thing. Also, one of the best moves I have is the regular, you know, 5 square combo. It may not be the best one, because I'm sure there's definitely better. I'm sure there's probably faster out there, but for me, it's always been really effective and always worked pretty well. So just throwing that out there. There's also a square. I think it's 2 squares and a triangle, I think it is. That does like the spinning move. That's a pretty good one. If you can get that one coming out, that's a pretty good move. Does like the multi-spin, I should say. Oh yeah, also camera gets kind of... It can kind of get kind of screwy sometimes when you're using the loudspeaker. So make sure that when you're aiming in, you use that slowdown time to your advantage. To move the camera a bit, because you'll probably... Wait, this didn't have a checkpoint in this fight. Oh. So it must have been... Yeah, it must have been the other fight I'm thinking of. Yeah, you fight one bombshell by himself. Not too bad, because all you really gotta do is just be super aggressive toward him, and then the rest is relatively easy. And then, of course, for this stuff, you know, just kind of dodge out of the way, and what have you. It's kind of funny watching myself go through this. There's a certain part, I think it's either Chapter 3 or this chapter, where I just kind of speed run through a part, and I speed dodge or something. I either damage boost or speed dodge. I forget what it was, but it was pretty damn cool. It was pretty damn cool, but we'll see it. Maybe not this part, but hopefully part 3, I think. Which reminds me, I gotta commentate for all these videos. So my commentary might kind of... It might falter a little bit in the future, but I will try my best to, you know, I'll go take some medicine stuff or something to make sure that I'm up to snuff before I try to record another episode. So, just for you guys, because we don't need to hear all that, you know, noises I make. I've been kind of under the weather recently, so I'm kind of like still kicking from it. And of course, speaking of kicking, kick back. So this fight right here does have a checkpoint halfway whenever you get him down to half health. So do bear that in mind. You know, just go try to beat him down to half health as fast as you can, and then after that, you know, get a checkpoint. That was a pretty nice dodge right there, because I didn't expect him to shoot that fast, but I dodged at just the right time for that to work. But again, with kickbacks, you know, they are, like I said before, relatively aggressive. And that's what kind of makes their downfall a lot easier, is using that to your advantage to kind of dodge them. So for this fight, again, Bombshell's, he's going to be in the background. He's got AoE stuff, but he's not too bad to deal with. Honestly, it doesn't really matter who you go for, but the other two have less health than Kickback itself. So if you want to use that to your advantage, like I was doing there, then, you know, of course, do that. But other than that, really, it's just a case of attrition for this fight, particularly because this fight goes on for a little too long. And if you're not dodging like all the time, you're probably gonna get hit. And that's the biggest issue with this fight, particularly, is just not dodging enough. You know, so make sure that you're doing that, of course. That way you can make sure you're in mid dodge, you know, in case they were going to go for an attack on you. Like right there, pretty much. And of course, vehicle attacks. I don't remember if I explained this well or not, but vehicle attacks do allow you to be in dodge if you're doing a vehicle attack. If you're mid-vehicle attack, you will get a dodge out of it too, if an enemy goes for an attack. So, there's that. Yeah, sorry I don't have much to explain on that fight, but there's not much to explain besides just pure attrition, constant mashing of dodge, and, you know, picking and choosing your fight there. Because again, two of the other bosses don't have as much health as the other one does. Kickback has the most health, so really you just kind of pick. For this one right here, I pretty much just, I don't know what, I was just being silly. I was trying my hardest to kind of like speedrun this fight. Usually whenever I do a charged boost attack, I tend to kind of just go straight for a vehicle attack right after. And when I start seeing the wall kind of come down, the protector wall kind of come down, I start to just go back and, you know, transform immediately. Just for time reasons, not really because I'm going to get hit, but yeah, just to save myself the time. So anyway, that's it for Chapter 2. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, take care, everybody.